Okay, earlier on we had the ability for caching, and that still works. We're still getting our members from a type of cache, I guess, or at least our signal. But when I click between two different pages, then we're not remembering what we had before, and I feel we should do. So let's go and take a look at how we can restore that kind of functionality into our application. So I'll close this stuff down, and we're going to be working in our member service for this. And inside here, for our get members, we're passing this some user params. And we can use the values of this as a kind of key, which we can store in a kind of cache. So we'll create this, in fact. We'll create something called member cache, and we're going to set it to a new map. And a map allows us to get and set values inside it, which is kind of ideal for what we're doing here, because inside this cache, we're going to store effectively the response that we get back from our API server based on the parameters that were being sent up. So if we just take a brief look at this, and I'll just say console.log, and we'll say object.values, and we'll say user params, and then we'll use join, and inside quotes we'll just specify a dash. And this is going to be effectively a key for our map object, which effectively is going to store key and value pairs. So when the same request comes in with the same key, we can simply fish out of our cache the response that we used before. So if we go to our browser and just take a look at what I mean by the key, then if I go to our console, and we've got effectively here a key. We've got the age filters, we've got the page number, the page size, add last active mail, and if I go to the next page, then we get a new key, which is going to be for page number 2, and then when we go back, then we'd already have this response when we configure this. So instead of going out to our API to get the values, we can just go to our member cache and retrieve the previous response from there. So that's the idea. And let's go configure this. So let's see, above the console.log, I'm going to say const response equals this.memberCache, and we'll use the get function, and then I'm just going to copy what we have in our console.log and paste it inside the get. And then we can check to see if we have a response for that key, and we'll say if response, then return this, and at this point we effectively want to update our signal, because our client component is going to be listening to the signal, so when this is updated with the new result, it will react accordingly. And let's make it a bit easier to do this. So where we've got, let's remove the console.log, we don't need that anymore, and I'll just return nothing at the moment just to get rid of the error. And what we've got here inside this response, we need to do effectively the same and use it if we find it in the member cache. So let's create another helper method inside here. And I'm going to say private and set paginated response. And we'll take in the response, which is going to be a type of HTTP response, which is also going to be a type of member array. And inside here, let's just copy this code and we'll paste it inside here. And then we can use this instead of what we have there. So we'll say list.set paginated response and pass in the response. And then we can use the same up here as well. And we'll still use a return, and returning breaks out of this function. So if we do return from this, then we don't execute any of this code down here. So we'll say return list.set paginated response, and we'll pass in the response. And then below the set paginated response, we need to set our cache as well. So we'll say list.memberCache.set, and we'll say object.values, and we'll pass in this.userParams, or just user params in this case, and then .join, and we'll add a dash. And then for the value, after the key, that's going to be the response. So the idea is that when the client calls the getMembers method here, or our component does, then first of all we check to see if we've already got this inside our member cache. Every time we make a request, then we're effectively storing that inside our member cache. So if it's in there, it's been requested before, and the page has not been refreshed, it should be available from there. And if we do have it, we're simply going to set our signal to that response, which is inside here, and our component will react to that. We don't need the members in here, by the way, so we can remove that. And if we do not have it in our cache, then we go out to our API server, we get the members, we set the paginated response just as we are doing, and then we set the member cache as well, so the next time it's available. And let's see if this functionality is working. So if I just refresh the page to start with, but then I go to the next page, we're going to have to load that from the API. But if I go back and then go back again and back again, then we can see that we're clearly getting that from the cache because we're not seeing any loading in place. And that will be the same for different filters as well. If I apply the filters and select females, and then I reset the filters, and then I go back to the females and apply the filters, again we get it from cache. So that's the idea of that, but what we don't have yet is the ability to do this for our detailed members. A bit more complex, that one, and we'll take a look at that next.